So thank you guys all for joining me today. Um, and we're going to discuss this topic. So can somebody tell me some ideas about why we work?
Paying our bills.
Okay, paying our bills. That's a very good reason. To survive, yes. I feel that. For fulfillment, that's a really good answer, yes. All these are great answers. Anyone else?
Purpose.
Okay, purpose, that's really good.
Our community.
Oh, okay, yes, I haven't thought about that, but that's actually really good. That's a good one. To build wealth, yes. All of these are great answers. So I would say the three things that come to mind for me when it comes to working, I would say, yeah, making an honest living. We live in a fallen world that requires us to work. And I would also say having a purpose. You know, usually when people meet us, they ask you, like, what do you do for a living? And oftentimes, like, our identity is tied into our jobs apart from Christ. And lastly, I would say to be generous through charity, tithes, and also taking care of yourself and loved ones and family. And there are many other reasons why we work, but let's take a look at a couple of verses to see what God has to say about why we work. So 2 Thessalonians 3:10 clearly says, "For even when we were with you, we give you this command. If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat." Okay, so we are working to get income, and if we're trying to bring home the daily bread, we got to go out to work and get the bread, okay? So although we do have to work to feed our families, I think this is the opportunity that God gives us to, we work to feed our families, but God can also use this in a way that makes us vessels of provision for others. So this verse saying, you know, one gives freely, another grows richer, and another withholds what he should give and only suffers. And I would say the Lord is asking us for us to be generous with what we have, our provisions. And like I said earlier, we can use that to actually provide for others with our generosity. And this is why we have a need for negotiation. So why are we here today? We all have a sense of urgency to some capacity to want to negotiate. Some of us have student loan debt, car debt, house debt, and it would be nice to, you know, pay those things off. And this means that we need to start negotiating our salaries so we can do it in a way like that's like a proper manner. Also, inflation is a thing. We're living in a time where eggs cost more than a Starbucks drink, and I never thought I would get to this point, but here we are. And let's be honest, sometimes we just want a higher income. You know, you want financial freedom, you know, like David Ramsey always says, you know, and you want to travel, you want to have more, you want to give more, and you need to negotiate your salary so you can actually be getting the maximum amount to do those things. Also, which people don't realize sometimes, companies are expecting you to negotiate, right? Sometimes they're always looking to save money and pay you less than what you're actually worth. But they're going to give you some room for you to actually negotiate because they want to see, like, do you know your value as well? And the biggest reason of all, I would say, for negotiation is you have a lot to lose. And I will share this with you. So this article is saying, by not negotiating, you can potentially leave between 1 million to 1.5 million on the table in lost earnings over your lifetime. The study actually said that getting paid just $5,000 more resulted in $1 to $1.5 million less than what you could actually make at the end of retirement, which is really crazy to think about. They cited a study of graduating university students found only 7% of female students attempted to negotiate at an initial job, compared to 57% of men negotiating. So in general, people are not negotiating, but especially women are not negotiating. And we need to do better, ladies. We do. Because, like I said, you're leaving a lot of money on the table over a long period of time by retirement. So many times employees are being underpaid simply because they're not negotiating, and they're only going to pay you as much as you think that you are worth. So if you accept a lower salary, then no one's going to actually be there to stop you from getting a lower salary. So you have to be your own advocate. And like this article was saying, which I have a little, if you want to look up this article later, that's the website, that 5K a year, you could have been a millionaire, but you're not negotiating, so you're losing that money. If that makes sense. All right, so here's a few questions you want to ask yourself when you are making a decision to negotiate your salary. Okay, so whether you're in an interview process or you are actually looking for a promotion in your job right now, you need to ask yourself these questions. Is my cost of living actually matching my income? Do I have the skills and experience to deserve this salary? Because if you're going into the negotiation space and you are not confident in yourself, it's gonna show, and they're gonna feel that. And lastly, how does God want to provide for me in this through my finances? What financial favor or opportunities does the Lord want to give me if I'm negotiating for a higher income? So these questions can help you rationalize why do you want to negotiate in the first place. Okay, so we're gonna go get to the practical stuff. Don't worry, this is all background. Okay, so why are a lot of us here tonight? Okay, we want more money, we want to know how to negotiate. And you're all probably thinking to yourselves, okay, so where do I start? How do I find out what my market value is? How do I negotiate? How do I say it? What do I say? Well, let's get into it. So, to come into negotiation space prepared, you need to do some research, okay? You need to find out the pay range for the specific position that you're applying for in the particular city or state that you're applying in. So here's a few websites that are some good resources for you to use to find out this information. So PayScale and Glassdoor, I would say, are the two most accurate websites for finding out a salary range for a specific job title and location. And Indeed and LinkedIn, you know, these career sites, they can have the salary for the job that you're actually looking for posted on the website. But sometimes you can actually negotiate beyond what they're actually posting. But we're going to get to that. But I would say the biggest thing that you can do to find out what you should be making in your position at a certain state or city location is networking. Okay, and I know networking is nerve-wracking, especially talking about salary transparency, but it is the only way that employees can get fair pay if they are talking to each other. Because corporations actually benefit off of employees not disclosing their salaries to each other. So you're actually doing a disservice to yourself when you're not having these salary transparency conversations with your coworkers and your colleagues. So I would say go on LinkedIn, reach out to some old classmates or professors, connect with them, and see how they got the current role that they are currently in and what you should be expecting to make in that role. Personally, for me, I've used my network of ex-coworkers, older people in church, my current coworkers, and I've actually had coworkers come up to me and ask me what I make, and it's actually really helped me negotiate in the future because I was having the conversations with them, and I was like, so what you making? And they're like, I'm making this, and I'm like, oh, word? Let me go back to them and figure out if I could be making that too. So typically, if a range is on like the job site, it's pretty set, but you can still negotiate to get that upper range that what they posted. Also, if you were getting like called by a recruiter or somebody from HR and they mention the salary, usually that salary range is a little bit set, but you can still negotiate. Okay, do you see where we're going here? Also, after you are offered the job and the salary is brought up around the offer, this is when you have the most leverage. Okay, so your bargaining power is at its peak. So if you are just first applying to this job and they haven't talked to you about salary yet, and you guys are having those conversations after job offers, like that is the maximum amount that you could actually ask for at that period of time, because they don't know who you are, they're hiring you, they don't know how much you're making right now. Like the negotiation is at its highest. So I would say a rule of thumb when it comes to negotiation is the person who says the number first loses. And I'm saying this because, I've actually experienced this. And I have said the number first, and I lost a lot. Because when I got the job and I started talking to my coworkers and figured out how much they were making, and they were making way more than I was making, and I was like, oh, it's because I said the number first and they just lowballed me. So speaking from experience, I know that this is true. So you set the expectations of the salary when you were saying the number first. So here's a go-to phrase that I like to say when I'm being cornered into giving a number. So what do you say if Barbara from HR is going to ask you this? So what are your salary expectations for this role? So what you're going to say is, considering my education, credentials, experience, I would expect to fall in the higher salary range of this position. And sometimes this is great if they take this answer, but sometimes they don't. So I'm going to tell you guys how to combat it if you actually are cornered into giving a number. But depending on your seniority level, sometimes you can, this thing is called blue skylining. I just figured out what this was. I looked it up because my friend likes to do this a lot because she's in a career that's wild. But anyway, sometimes you just give an outrageous number that's just so high that you know is high, too high for the position, just to anchor what's going on, like what they can actually give you. And sometimes it works out. But like I said, it's really dependent on like the company you're applying for. Like if you're applying for like a multi-billion-dollar company or a multi-million-dollar company, and you're at a seniority level that's like senior or whatever, and you know that it's a certain number and you're gonna go beyond that number, it could actually work for you. And it has worked. Okay, so you have a job offer. Like I said, don't mention the salary until the job is actually offered to you, because that's when you actually have the leverage. You are going to let them tell you what the salary range is for the job. And you need to know in the back of your mind that they usually can give you 10 to 20K more than what they actually present to you. As stated before, sometimes, depending on the company, if it's not a multi-million-dollar company, if it's a nonprofit, XYZ, they might not actually have that. But more times often than not, they actually can give you 10 to 20K more than what they're actually presenting you. And what I will also say is gently stand your ground when it comes to negotiation, because you do not want to seem like you're not confident in what you're asking for if you are actually being cornered into telling them how much you want. Okay, so what if I have to say the number first? Well, you don't always have to lose in the situation. There's ways to get around it. This is when your research is going to be coming in handy, okay? So pray about a number that you're absolutely not willing to go under, and then add 10K to it. The number that you actually prayed about, the number that you're not willing to go under, put it in your back pocket. That's for you. No one else has to know about that number but you. And then you add 10K to it, and that's going to be the number that you actually tell your interviewers. So to determine what is the market value of that job, the highest amount you can actually get paid in that position, you're going to be using all the resources from the research that you did. Even like a simple Google search, or go on PayScale or Glassdoor, and you're looking at the ranges, and stick to the higher range. And this is what you're going to actually say if you were cornered into giving them a number. Given the market value rate for this title, paired with my experience and unique benefits I can provide to this company, I would expect to fall to the X amount to Y amount. Now, I told you guys what the X amount is. The X amount is your minimum number that you have in your back pocket plus 10K, and your Y amount is 10K plus that. So let's say your X amount was 70. You're like, okay, 70 is in my back pocket. You're gonna say, okay, I expect to fall in the range of 70 to 80. Are you guys tracking? Okay. So never let them know your personal low, okay? Hopefully that sticks. Okay, so I'm well aware that negotiating is scary. I'm not gonna say it's not. And these are some scary thoughts you might have when you are negotiating. Like, what if they laugh at my requests? What if they think I'm crazy? Like, how am I gonna actually communicate this? Like, what if this is my dream job, but like they're not giving me the salary that I really want? There are other things that you can actually negotiate. So remember, you were negotiating with yourself, okay? So you are weighing out the benefits for this job, and you have to think to yourself, am I willing to get a lower salary for the time being if this job is great? And you want to ask them for a middle ground. And that's why I tell you guys have the minimum, and then add 10K to it. Because usually if you do that, they can get you closer to that 10K number. Like they'll be like, okay, maybe we can't give you 80, but we'll give you 75. And you already know in your mind, I'm willing to take 70, but they don't need to know that. You still are making 75 now. Does that make sense? Okay, so you can also ask for a position that's higher than the position that you're applying for, if that makes sense. Like, hey, well, like if you guys can't give me this, can we actually go to a more senior position to match me to that salary range? So I actually have a little story to tell y'all about this girl that I know. She was actually at a job where she asked them to give her a 5K increase in her promotion, or not really a promotion, but just like a 5K increase in her base salary. And they said, no, we don't have it in the budget. Mind you, this is a multi-million-dollar company. They have it in the budget, right? So clearly they did not value her. And she was like, you know what? I'm just going to apply for another job at another company. And that's what she did. She applied for the job at another company, and they told her, like, okay, we can give you 75. And she was just like, I don't know. That's a little low for what, I'm looking for. Because she was, like, getting married, and there's all this stuff that was going on that she was just like, I need a higher salary right now. And she had the credentials for it. So she interviewed for the company, and they loved her, and they were, like, gung-ho about her. So my friend was telling her, like, hey, like, why don't you just ask them for 100 or whatever? Because they want you. They want you. So just ask for 100. And she was just like, oh, that's a little much. I'm just going to ask for 95. She asked for 95. They gave it to her. Mind you, they started off saying they were going to give her 75. So they literally had the money to give it to her. So they offered her 95. So all in all, she ended up going from making 50K a year to having 95 base plus a 25% bonus, and they gave her a $5,000 stipend for like electronics, like a computer and stuff like that. So like all in all, she made like an extra 50K just because she negotiated. Like literally extra 50K, like that's wild. Or more than 50K because like the plus a 25% bonus. But anyway, this is just to stress that we need to negotiate because we're leaving money on the table if we're not. Also, like I said, you're negotiating with yourself, right? So you need to know when to say no, okay? No, K-N-O-W, to say N-O. Okay, so I'll tell you guys a little testimony about me. In the beginning of last year, I was applying for jobs, and there was a job that I wanted to get, and I was so gung-ho about it because like it was a great company, like they were doing rare diseases. Oh, I'm a scientist, BC Dogs. Yeah, so and there was a number that came to my mind that I was just like, I'll literally accept anything they give me as long as it's not this number. Like this number's too low. And after doing the whole interview process and talking to them, I literally like met with every single person in the department. Like I don't understand why people are like that in biopharma. They're literally just like, so you're gonna meet the president you're gonna meet the CEO, and I'm like, okay, like why? But yeah, it was great. And then they came back and they told me the exact number that I said I was not gonna accept. I never told them the number, but like I knew it in my mind. right? And like this was my base number that I had in my back pocket, right? So I don't believe in coincidences with the Lord as a Christian. I was like, Lord, you gave me this number. I wasn't the one who came up with it. So obviously this is not the place for me. Also, the job happened to be in Jersey, so I was like, yeah, it's going to be a no for me anyway, because Jersey, no, I'm kidding. No offense to anybody in Jersey. But that's literally, I knew when I had to say no. And then the Lord gave me a job that was paying way more than what they were offering me because I knew my value. And I had like 2 other job offers like within that same week that were paying me way more or offering me way more. And I accepted the job that I have now. So you also need to know when you're being undervalued, right? In that situation, I was being undervalued. My friend was also being undervalued in her situation. Like her job didn't even give her $5K. And then this other job gave her like $50K more. And also know when your financial needs are not being met. All right. There are other places that you can negotiate as well. PTO, you love PTO. Long-term incentives, like company stock, maybe your base is low, but they're like, you know what, we're going to give you a couple of stocks. How about that? Bam, the annual bonus, commission, XYZ, even like tuition reimbursement. These are all other things. The title that you have, like what Melissa did. Ooh, not me saying her name. Like my friend said, y'all don't know her though. She don't go to Freedom. She actually got a title increase, and that gave her more of a salary because she changed the position that she was initially applying for. Okay. And lastly, I would like to say this verse. Then he said to the disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. I think this is a pretty well-known verse, and we all know that this is talking about making disciples. I think that's what I've learned in church. But I think also, like many parts of the Bible, it can also be applied to other aspects of your life. And I think about people that need the gospel, but I also think about the people that are in need, that need their basic needs met, food, shelter, water, before they could even hear the gospel. Like they're like so hungry, like that they're not even thinking about it, you know? And a lot of church leads these ministries going out and like Emmanuel and the Dream Center and feeding the homeless and stuff. And we have wonderful volunteers at church that do this and wonderful people at staff that do this as well. And they provide the physical labor and volunteering that they need these ministries to work. But what also do we need for these ministries to work? Funds. And I think offering is a way that the church is able to do that. We are able to provide for these ministries to work. There are people all over the world in the church that are providing for these ministries. And how great would it be if you negotiated your salary to get that pumpernickel bread, to give more? It would be great. So with that, I would like to close. Thank you for Freedom of Work for having me here. I've had a great time.